No. So I'm going to now please give a fantastic Aspen welcome to one of our own parish, Cynthia Bourgeot.
Good morning, all. So just a brief explanation of what we're about here before we actually plunge into it. That Thomas Keating, of course, is one of our great local treasures whose profound gifts to the spiritual world were midwifed and nurtured here in Aspen. And he left two, one for which he's very well known, which is his work with developing the method of centering prayer, a short meditational method that put Christians back in the ballpark in terms of developing a meditation practice. And he developed also a structure that goes with that, contemplative outreach, that helped support people making their journey of transformation in the Christian path in meditation. All the while, he had this other operation going on, which was actually the birthplace of his centering prayer, his deep, abiding love for the other religions and for interspiritual contemplative dialogue. He brought centering prayer into existence with help from friends in the Buddhist and the Hindu traditions. And he then beginning in 1984 at the monastery, offered the Snow Mass Conference, which was a groundbreaking way of bringing interspiritual people from all the faith traditions together to meditate together and to talk from the heart rather than just bouncing off of each other in that busy propositional interreligious dialogue. So his legacy grew deep, and out of the Snow Mass Conference was birthed Spiritual Paths, when Ed Bastian, another local hero, said, why can't we take this out and use it as a model to teach and form people in the world? And so Ed pulled together myself, the Helminskis, Swami Marupananda, Rami Shapiro, to be an interspiritual faculty to model the same way of pedagogy. And then just at the end of his life, 2 years before he died, he pulled together younger contemplatives from a variety of, mostly from Christian traditions, but mostly nowadays, younger contemplatives are religiously bilingual. And so we have a tremendous breadth of younger, articulate voices. You'll hear some of them today. So when he died last October, his Catholic and Christian heritage was richly celebrated. But there was a sense that this gift he had given us in the interspiritual community still had an unresolved piece that wanted coming together to ponder, to study, to celebrate, to see what it would teach us to do. And since most of the teaching and most of the reference points that Thomas was using in his great love, non-duality, are better exemplified within the other traditions and within his own Christian matrix, it became really important for us to form a sort of holding tank to talk. So we've been talking, listening with a wonderful group of people. And today, what we wish to do is to offer up an offering from each of the faith traditions of prayers, thanksgivings, blessings, in the colors and the languages and the official ceremonial robes of these traditions, to celebrate the fact that Thomas's heart was a cosmic heart. We're going to explore pieces of that heart, offer them up, and receive them back in gratitude. In a service that will take on, basically, if you know what it means, lessons and carols format, we'll have a contribution from each of the traditions, interweaving some poetry that Thomas wrote late in his life, expressing his own sort of painful non-dual emergence. Prayers, gratitude, self-offering. So follow the course of it, interspersed with silence. Your own silent, listening heart is the sounding board in which any of this will make sense. So there is not a single spectator in this group. We have no audience. We are listening hearts, and the quality of your attention is the atmosphere into whatever is really asking to be born this weekend. Can find its birth canal. So with that, we start with Swami, and over to you, my friend.
Oh, thank you, Nicholas. Good. We will chant together the Gayatri Mantra, which is printed in the program in what we can call Reader's Digest phonetics. So please, I'll chant it once and then follow along. We'll chant it 6 times, and then we'll read together the translation. This is the most sacred prayer in Hinduism, which has been chanted for thousands of years, at least 4,000 and probably much more, by millions of Hindus every day. And so it has the power of those millions, countless millions of people who have chanted for at least 4,000 or more years. This is my musical accompaniment. Om Bhurбhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Bhurбhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Bhurбhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Bhurбhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Bhurбhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Bhurбhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. I'll read the first part of the translation, and you please read, all of you, with me the last phrase. Om, we meditate on the effulgent glory of that divine light which has projected the worlds. May that illumine our hearts. Om. Let me just add that one of my teachers said that all of his spiritual awakening, and he's a great spiritual man, all of his spiritual awakening came through the sincere repetition of this prayer. Now I wish to read from Father Tom's poem, Out of a Stone. As the false self diminishes and the ego becomes a servant, everything turns into poetry, and everything becomes a movement of divine love, but the separate self lingers on. Once the separate self has been laid to rest, the divine presence alone remains, and the creator of all becomes all in all. The silence of the creator is thunderous, drowning out everything else and hiding in endless creativity.
It's as if some people get the wrong death, said the young novice Constance in Poulenc's famous opera dialogue of the Carmelites, pondering the unexpectedly difficult death of their saintly abbess. And young Constance adds, for everyone who endures such a difficult death, another soul will fly on angels' wings into heaven. It's a closely understood awareness that Thomas Keating died an unexpectedly difficult death. His body hung on longer than any would have expected. He outlived the wildest expectations of experienced hospice workers. And there was physical pain, but more there was spiritual pain, as in that empty space, he plunged headlong toward the abyss, toward what is really the other side of that oneness, which is infinite emptiness, a place of no fixed reference points. And the effulgent glory is not simply for sissies. It's not just smiling peace, but it brings it at the cost of everything that we know of our constructed universe, of the poetry. And we sensed as we had conversations about this yesterday, it came up as a surprisingly important topic. The suffering and also, in some sense, a sort of cosmic dimension to it. Again and again, the word began to be mentioned, the sense that he wasn't just doing this for himself. The words came up that he was plunging into a cosmic band for some reasons beyond just his own personal, as one would say, karma. In Buddhism, this archetype is called the bodhisattva, and that name is mentioned. The one who voluntarily takes on, essentially, the cosmic suffering, the pain body of the world, that all may be free. In Christianity, that same place is occupied by the place of the Paschal mystery, understood not so much as atonement and guilt and punishment, but as the voluntary taking on of the pain and the brokenness of the conditions as they are, that others may be free. And we sense that in Thomas's deep passage, he was moving into worlds uncharted, causal worlds, so as to bring the force of that to the disposal of our world. If we, as the sounding board, have the courage, the purity of heart, the trust to respond, to reciprocate. It was a surprising thought that came up. So it seemed in this Christian set of it that this whole Paschal aspect finds an easy place to reaffirm, because that's in the tradition anyway. I want to read what I think is the most difficult of his poems in the final 8 poems he wrote, suggesting at what price oneness is bought. And then we will sing and celebrate this in the image of the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Twilight of the self, writes Thomas, my heart is solitary now. It finds no companionship anywhere and no wish to find any. My sole desire is you, and you are always absent. Can one love absent so intensely that even your presence seems like an intrusion? I move around in aimless circles. Rituals and sacred symbols, once treasured sources of relating to you, are meaningless to me now. They communicate nothing of you, who are everything to me, but for whom and from whom I feel no love, nor hope of fulfillment. I am as one turned inside out, and there is nothing there. Not you, not me. If this is union, there is neither two in one, nor one without another. I long to relate to everyone, yet lack the capacity to relate to anyone. There is only your boundless presence that treats me like a thing without a heart, except perhaps a broken heart. For the God I thought I knew no longer exists.
Well, as our previous panel was alluding, that when we entered into the presence of Father Thomas and the Snowmass Conference, that many of us entered into that space with this rather rigid identity around who we were and a rather prideful attitude about the traditions from which we came. You might identify with that. I certainly was that way because I had spent decades studying Buddhism and had become quite attached to my Buddhism. And as I entered into this group of meditators from so many traditions, I found that this permeability that Matthew was describing began to happen to me. These ripples in the pond were emerging with each other, and we found ourselves in this silence with each other that Thomas used to call the first language of the divine, this silence that made our hearts, our minds permeable so that we could fully absorb the contemplative consciousness, the depths of each other's traditions, that which lay beneath the words and the ceremonies and the holidays, etc. Well, I think you've heard so much commonality from what I'm going to say now from Buddhism. One part is what Cynthia mentioned, this bodhisattvaness, which you find in Christianity and in Islam and so many traditions. And here's something from the Karuna Metta Sutta. It goes like this. Let none deceive another. And as I do this, just contemplate the meaning and let it soak in. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any space. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her only child, her only child. So with a boundless heart, one should cherish all living beings. This is this bodhisattva vow that we in fact put the well-being, the release of suffering of all beings as our main goal and purpose in life. And whatever wisdom and whatever meditative capacity that we achieve, we use it to help others. And in so doing, it rebounds upon us so that we can truly be happy. And now I'm going to do these 4 vows, and I'm going to ask you to do this in this call and response that you'll see in the program. And as I do it, please contemplate the deep meaning in it, and we'll pause a little bit between each. Beings are numberless.
I vow.
Delusions are inexhaustible.
I vow to transform.
Dharmas are boundless. The awakened way is incomparable. And now Bree Stoner is going to read a section from one of the poems from Father Thomas, and just a little meditation following that. Bree, thank you.
I invite you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes or lower your gaze as we receive these words from Father Thomas. Stillness. Our true nature is stillness, the source from which we come. It manifests within us as a rising tide of silence, a flowing stream of peacefulness, a limitless ocean of calm, or just sheer stillness. The deep listening of pure contemplation is the path to stillness. All words disappear into it, and all creation awakens to the delight of just being.
I invite Brother Eric Keating to come up. Eric is a novice of St. Benedict's Monastery who was given the gift of accompanying Thomas very, very closely in the last 5 years of his life, including not only those years in Snowmass, but after his final transfer to Spencer, and was with him at the moment of his death. And Eric, could you share some words which Thomas left us shortly before his death? And you can explain a little bit more if you want. And then we'll conclude. You may have noticed that there's a Jewish absence in this, and it was not intentional. It's because our dear beloved friend Rami Shapiro at the last moment couldn't come because of a family emergency. But the beautiful Jewish heart will be represented in our closing benediction from the Bernstein Mass. And we'll have our singers gathered behind.
Good morning. As Cynthia said, I was a monk at St. Benedict's Monastery for 5 years, and I was with Father Thomas pretty much every day at St. Joseph's Abbey before he passed. And every day was a different experience with Thomas, and many wonderful things happened around him with other monks, and he spontaneously gave teachings. He remained long periods in prayer and silence. He went long periods without food or water. 13 days before he passed, actually on my birthday, he hadn't spoken in 4 days, and it was the abbot and I that were in the room with him. And he came to, and he was speaking from this. It wasn't like the abbot and I were even in the room. He was speaking from this cosmic space. And these are his words. Dear friends, in the universe, an extraordinary moment of civilization seems to be overtaking us. Through the great discoveries of science and spirituality, we find ourselves in essentially a new and different place than ever before in history. It's a time of enormous expectancy and possibility. We are called to start not with the old world contracts, now that we know that they are all lies, but what we know is the truth, as proved by silence and science. So I call upon the nations to consider this as a possibility, that we should begin a new world with one that actually exists. This is the moment to manifest this world by showing loving concern for poverty, loving appreciation for the needs of the world, and opportunities for accelerated development. We need to find ways to make these really happen. I make this humble suggestion that now arms making is of no significance in the world. It hinders its progress. This will allow and offer the world the marvelous gift of beginning, creating, of trusting each other, of forgiving each other, and of showing compassion, care for the poor, and putting all our trust in the God of heaven and earth. I leave this hope in your hands and hearts, coming as a real inspiration from the heart of God. What does he care about who has this or other lands, when the power to begin with the truest history is coming from religion as expression of the source that has been realized for centuries? Buddhism, Hinduism, Sufism, indigenous, and Christianity, all religions, oneness is their nature. Amen.